Kevin Stefanski has a decision to make, and Mel Kiper Jr. just made sure the whole football world is watching. The Browns head coach is allegedly pushing for Dillon Gabriel, whose on-field struggles have become hard to ignore, while Shedeur Sanders, ranked first on multiple draft boards, remains glued to the bench. In an unfiltered takedown, Kiper accused Stefanski and the Browns of perpetuating a broken system that swallowed up quarterback after quarterback. It's not just mismanagement. It's a refusal to learn. SS interview. The Sanders dilemma puts a spotlight on a deeper dysfunction. Kiper's message is clear. Cleveland's leadership isn't failing by accident. It's a consequence of ego, division, and unchecked decision-making. Sanders' drop in the draft and his current silence on the sideline aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of franchise unwilling to prioritize development over politics. And until that changes, no quarterback is safe. Mel Kiper Jr. has seen enough. After covering NFL draft for decades, watching countless quarterbacks rise, fall, and occasionally flourish, he finally snapped, and the Cleveland Browns were his target. Not over a misevaluation, not over a bad pick, but over a pattern, a culture, a franchise that, in his word and actions, has spent the past 25 years systematically destroying quarterbacks. And now, it's Shedeur Sanders caught in the wreckage. This isn't just about a fifth-round draft pick. It's about what that pick represents. 9 NFL executives had Sanders as their top quarterback prospect. Not a sleeper. Not one to watch. Number 1. And still, 143 names were called before his. The Browns finally took him at 144. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because the politics in Cleveland, and maybe even the league at large, got in the way.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Mel Kiper didn't speculate. He detonated. He pointed the finger directly at the Browns front office and called them out for what's really going on. An internal power struggle that's costing this franchise yet another promising quarterback. On one side, you have GM Andrew Berry, who saw the value in Sanders. On the other, head coach Kevin Stefanski, who's been backing his guy, Dillon Gabriel. And let's be honest, Gabriel has not delivered. His performances have been shaky, the offense has been inconsistent, and fans are left asking the obvious question: why isn't Sanders getting a shot? The answer, according to Kiper, is simple: dysfunction. Kiper wasn't talking about stats. He was talking about structure, about the way Cleveland has allowed ego and mismanagement to shape their roster decisions. Sanders wasn't passed over for football reasons. He was buried in the middle of the battle between a coach trying to protect his authority and a general manager trying to justify his draft board. And here's the pattern that Kiper couldn't ignore anymore. Cleveland doesn't develop quarterbacks. They derail them. This is a team with 1 playoff win since 1999. 1 in over 2 decades. And the quarterback graveyard? It's real. Create new folder. Tim Couch photos. Tim Couch. Create new folder. Brady Quinn photos. Brady Quinn. Create new folder. Johnny Manziel photos. Johnny Manziel. Baker Mayfield. All brought in with hype. All chewed up by the same broken environment, and all ultimately discarded. And now, Shedeur Sanders, one of the most talked about quarterback prospects entering the draft, is being lined up as the next name on that list. It's not just bad luck. It's a deeply embedded problem in how this franchise operates. And that's what set Kiper off. He's not reacting to a bad pick or a missed opportunity. He's reacting to a pattern, one that's lasted decades, one that has robbed quarterbacks of their careers, fans of their hope, and a league of talent that could have flourished anywhere else. The situation with Sanders is the most blatant example yet. A guy this highly rated, sitting this long without a single real opportunity, while a struggling quarterback continues to start. That's not just questionable, it's intentional. Whether it's outright sabotage or just apathy buried under internal dysfunction, the outcome is the same. Talent is being wasted. And Kiper made it clear, this isn't about one mistake. This is about a system that's failed for 25 years and continues to pretend that failure is part of the plan. Let's look at the facts. Sanders fell to the 5th round, not because of talent, but because of something else. And when he landed in Cleveland, that fall didn't stop, it accelerated. Because instead of being welcomed as a potential future leader, he was thrown into a divided organization where coaching and management aren't on the same page, where development plans are vague and accountability is even more rare. And now we're watching it unfold again. Kiper's criticism zeroed in on the power dynamics at play. Stefanski wants Gabriel. Gabriel was his choice. Sanders? That was Barry's move. And so, instead of evaluating both quarterbacks fairly, the Browns are letting this internal divide dictate who sees the field, even when the results are already proving the coach's pick isn't getting it done. That's not football strategy. That's organizational rot. This isn't some fan conspiracy. This is a respected analyst with decades of credibility openly saying that Cleveland is sabotaging its own players. Again, that they're more interested in internal turf wars than developing the guy they spent a draft pick on. That this team, for all its talent, cannot get out of its own way. And if you follow the Browns for any amount of time, none of this is surprising. They've done it over and over. Draft a quarterback, hype him up, give him a year, maybe less, then change the system, change the staff, and throw him to the wolves. And when it doesn't work, they move on. The player gets labeled as a bust, while the same leaders keep their jobs, reshuffle the blame, and hit reset. Sanders is the latest example. But if things don't change, he won't be the last. Kiper's explosion wasn't just an outburst. It was a warning to the Browns, to the league, to any young quarterback thinking about what team might be a good fit. Because right now, Cleveland isn't just a bad situation. It's a dangerous one. Not because of injuries, not because of roster holes, but because of a leadership model that seems incapable of prioritizing talent over pride. And the fans? They're watching it all unfold in real time. Social media is lit up with demands to play Sanders. Analysts are calling out the hypocrisy. The questions are getting louder, and excuses are wearing thin. The message is clear. This guy was ranked QB1 by multiple execs. Why is he holding a clipboard on the worst offense in the division? No answer. Just more dysfunction. Kiper's rant was a last straw kind of moment. And unless the Browns want this season to spiral into yet another lost year, something has to change. Play the quarterback you drafted. Give him reps. Give him support. And stop letting internal politics ruin every ounce of momentum this team tries to build. Speaking, because if they don't, the rest of the league will keep doing what it's done for years, watching the Browns implode while shaking their heads and moving on. Mel Kiper didn't go nuclear for ratings. He did it because someone had to say it. The Browns are wasting Shedeur Sanders, and they're doing it in plain sight. So what do you think? Is this just another name added to the Browns' quarterback graveyard? Is Shedeur Sanders being intentionally sidelined, or is he just the latest victim of Cleveland's long history of dysfunction? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who's been shouting at the Browns' play calling all season, and hit that like button if you're tired of watching talented players disappear in Cleveland's front office crossfire. Make sure you're subscribed, because if this mess keeps going the way it's going, we'll be right back here next week with another meltdown. At some point, you have to stop calling it incompetence and start calling it what it really is: deliberate neglect. That's what Mel Kiper Jr. laid bare in his now viral takedown of the Cleveland Browns. He didn't just criticize a bad coaching decision. He didn't just call out a weak offensive scheme. He accused an NFL franchise of sabotaging its own quarterbacks, on purpose or not. The result is the same. And in the center of that storm, Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who had no business falling to the 5th round. A quarterback who, by all credible accounts, was considered the top prospect at his position by 9 different NFL executives. That's not casual praise. That's league-wide validation. So when Mel Kiper goes on air and essentially accuses the Browns of malpractice, people listen. Because he's not talking about theories. He's talking about patterns. A franchise pattern of drafting talent, mismanaging it, pitting leadership against itself, and leaving promising careers in ruin. And the evidence is overwhelming. Let's walk through what's really going on. Shedeur Sanders was brought into a situation that already had all the markings of a toxic quarterback environment. A head coach, Kevin Stefanski, locked into a loyalty dynamic with his guy, Dylan Gabriel. A general manager, Andrew Barry, trying to push back with a calculated value pick. A locker room watching in real time as leadership can't even agree on who the future is supposed to be. And a fan base screaming into the void for change. Gabriel hasn't been good. That's not opinion. That's the scoreboard. The offense is stagnant. The execution is shaky. And the Browns, in true fashion, are losing games they should be competing in. But instead of making the obvious adjustment, try the highly rated quarterback you just drafted, they stick with the status quo. Not because it's working, but because no one wants to blink first. This is exactly the kind of front office power struggle that kills momentum. Stefanski doesn't want to look like he lost the quarterback battle inside the building. Barry doesn't want to come down too hard and alienate the coaching staff. And Sanders? He's the one holding the bag, stuck in a system that never gave him a chance to compete on fair terms. And Mel Kiper called it out. Directly, he basically said, "We've seen this movie before, and we already know how it ends." It ends with another quarterback never reaching his potential, not because of lack of talent, but because the team that drafted him didn't know how, or didn't care enough, to build a stable environment around him. Let's stop pretending the Browns are just unlucky. They're not. They are consistent in their dysfunction. They are disciplined in their disarray. And Shedeur Sanders is simply the next quarterback being fed into machine. Go back and look. The timeline is brutal. Tim Couch was drafted to be the savior. He was destroyed by a bad roster and no protection. Brady. Quinn was never given a chance to grow before the plug was pulled. Johnny Manziel. The team ignored every red flag and then acted surprised when it blew up. Baker Mayfield played through injuries, gave Cleveland its first playoff win in forever, and still got dumped when the next shiny object came along. At a certain point, it's not the quarterbacks. It's the people in charge of them. And Kiper's blow-up wasn't just about Sanders. It was about all of it. The decades-long failure of the Browns to develop quarterbacks, to protect them, to choose one direction and stick to it long enough to see progress. Because what we're seeing now is just the same cycle in high definition. This is what the NFL's worst-run franchises do. They pit coach against GM. They ignore player development. They prioritize internal politics over performance. And they wonder why the same problems keep repeating themselves year after year. The Browns have proven, once again, that they are willing to sabotage their own investment rather than unify behind it. Shedeur Sanders wasn't a gamble. He wasn't a Hail Mary. He was a calculated pick that multiple teams thought was worth building around. And instead of giving him a shot, Cleveland shoved him to the bottom of the depth chart and moved on like it didn't matter. And maybe the most alarming part of all this? There's zero indication that they plan to change course. They're not easing Sanders into the system. They're not preparing him for a mid-season takeover. They're not even pretending there's a quarterback competition. They're just ignoring him. And for what? To protect a coach's ego? To keep the locker room from asking hard questions? To avoid owning the fact that they might have misplayed the entire offseason? That's not a rebuild. That's sabotage with a playbook. Kiper's outrage is rooted in something deeper than football strategy. It's about wasted opportunity. It's about a franchise that keeps asking fans to trust the plan, even though every single sign points to the fact that there is no plan. Or worse, the plan is broken and nobody has the guts to say it out loud. And it's not just fans who are fed up. The league sees this. Other front offices see it. Future prospects see it. Agents, scouts, media, they all know that if you're a quarterback with potential, Cleveland is not where you want to go. Not because the city isn't great, not because the fans don't care, but because the leadership has proven, over and over again, that it doesn't know how to nurture a quarterback. It only knows how to break them. And Shedeur Sanders is watching this all unfold in real time. He's sitting on the bench, watching a team with a losing record double down on a quarterback who isn't producing. He's seeing the media start to turn their attention to other rookies, other stories. And at some point, that draft day buzz will turn into frustration, then into questions, and then into doubt. Not because he failed, but because the system failed him. And let's not pretend this can't have long-term consequences. Players develop in windows. You can't afford to waste a year or two, or three waiting for your own team to get its act together. By the time Cleveland figures out what they have in Sanders, if they ever do, it could be too late. Confidence erodes. Mechanics regress. Public perception changes. That's what Mel Kiper was yelling about. Not just the draft, not just the depth chart, but the trajectory of a player's career being dismantled before it even begins. This isn't just bad management. It's a case study in how a dysfunctional franchise can ruin promising talent through inaction, through fear, through politics, through plain old bad leadership. So where does this leave Sanders? Waiting, watching, wasting time, and hoping someone in the organization finally decides that winning games is more important than protecting job titles. And where does it leave the Browns? Right where they've been for 25 years. Still chasing the quarterback they can't seem to find. Still burning to potential like it's disposable. Still asking fans to believe in a vision that never materializes. Kiper wasn't just venting. He was putting the league on notice. If Shedeur Sanders gets lost in this system, if he becomes just another name on Cleveland's endless quarterback carousel, the blame won't fall on the player. It will fall on the franchise that never gave him a chance. So what's next? That's on the Browns. They can keep playing the same losing hand. Or they can do the one thing they refused to do for decades. Choose a direction, stand behind it, and develop their talent like a real NFL team. Shedeur Sanders deserves that chance. And if Cleveland can't give it to him, they owe it to him to send him somewhere that will. There's a certain kind of fatigue that comes with watching the same mistakes unfold year after year, like a rerun nobody asked for. And in Cleveland, that fatigue is generational. Browns fans have been promised hope, change, a new culture, more times than anyone can count. And yet, here we are again. Another young quarterback. Another internal battle. Another season slipping through their fingers while talent rides a bench. This is what Mel Kiper Jr. exploded over. Not just Shedeur Sanders being passed over, but why it keeps happening. Why Cleveland, despite every opportunity to turn the corner, insists on sabotaging itself from the inside out. And it is sabotage. Whether intentional or not, the outcome is the same. A top-tier quarterback prospect falls into your lap. And instead of embracing the upside, the coaching staff locks in on a lesser option purely to protect the pecking order. Dillon Gabriel has done nothing to justify the chokehold he currently has on the Browns' starting job. The offense is flat. The rhythm is off. The play calling looks like it's been stripped down to preseason basics. And yet week after week, there's no shakeup. No change. Just the same recycled explanations in post-game pressers about process, execution, and sticking with the plan. What plan? If there's a plan, it's buried under layers of ego and bureaucracy. Because a team serious about winning doesn't let this many games go by while a highly rated, healthy quarterback with untapped potential sits unused. Mel Kiper didn't just slam the Browns. He exposed the rot. He pulled back the curtain on what so many in the league have known but rarely say out loud. That the Browns aren't just bad at developing quarterbacks. They're actively preventing it. And this isn't abstract criticism. This is backed by decades of evidence. Tim Couch was the number 1 overall pick and never stood a chance behind a non-existent offensive line. Brady Quinn was thrown into chaos with zero direction. Johnny Manziel, for all his flaws, was a disaster made worse by Cleveland's total lack of structure. Baker Mayfield gave them their first playoff win in 26 years and was still tossed aside when the relationship got complicated. Now it's Shedeur Sanders' turn. Drafted way lower than expected, shoved into a dysfunctional locker room dynamic, and ignored while the offense flounders and the losses pile up. And let's not pretend this is a situation where Sanders isn't ready. That argument might hold weight if the guy ahead of him was thriving. But Gabriel's stats are average at best. There are no wow moments, no signature wins. Just a steady decline in production and rising frustration from fans who've seen this script too many times. Stefanski's refusal to even consider Sanders isn't just stubborn, it's political. Starting Sanders will be a win for Andrew Berry, who made the pick. It would be a subtle admission that the coach's chosen guy isn't cutting it. And in a franchise that operates like a Game of Thrones subplot, that kind of concession is apparently off limits. KS speaking, this is how quarterbacks get ruined. Not by bad play, but by bad process. And when Kiper spoke out, he wasn't just venting as a media figure. He was speaking from perspective of someone who's watched careers get derailed in slow motion over and over again because leadership was too divided, too proud, or too unaccountable to make the obvious move. The Browns have built a culture where internal power struggles take precedence over player development, and it shows, not just on the field, but in the way they've handled Sanders since day one. No media push, no reps with the ones, no competition, just a quiet burial under the weight of internal politics. And you know who sees it? Everyone. Fans are already chanting for Sanders in the stands. Analysts across the media are calling out the dysfunction. Other players around the league are starting to weigh in. Even neutral observers are starting to ask the same question. What are the Browns doing? Because to the outside world, the answer is clear. They're blowing it. Again, it's the repetition that stings the most. This isn't a franchise making a rare mistake. This is a franchise that only knows how to make the same mistake in slightly different packaging every single time. And the longer they drag it out, the worse it gets, not just for this season, but for the credibility of the organization moving forward. How do you ask fans to buy into the future when you keep burying it alive? How do you convince free agents to join a team where locker room loyalty matters more than performance? How do you scout talent in good faith if you're just going to sit on out of spite? The Browns had a real chance here. A GM and a coach could have aligned. They could have built a development plan for Sanders. They could have been transparent about his timeline, ease him in, and use his talent instead of stashing it. But instead, they opted for silence, evasion, and another season of confusion. Kiper's blow-up wasn't just overdue. It was necessary, because if no one calls this stuff out, it just becomes normalized. And the Browns? They've normalized quarterback failure in a way that's almost historic. And if they're not careful, Shedeur Sanders will just be another footnote. Another what-if buried in the back half of the depth chart. Another cautionary tale for future draftees. Another story of talent wasted in a system too broken to realize what it had. So what now? They either make the move or brace for the fallout. Because at this point, it's not just fans and media watching. It's the entire league. And the longer they keep Sanders sidelined, the more obvious it becomes that this is no longer about football. This is about pride. And pride in Cleveland keeps coming before the fall. So what do you think? Is Sanders the victim of another Browns meltdown? Can the franchise be saved from itself? Or is it too deep into the dysfunction to change course now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you're tired of seeing young talent wasted. And hit that subscribe button. We'll be here tracking every twist in this saga. Because the Browns never fail to deliver. Even when they fail at everything else.